which will be quite poignant to you, Graham.
Yeah.
You get this one on the film.
Oh no, I think I know what that is because I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen that. I came across it and I stopped myself bringing it
because there's a wee tiny
Change days indeed. It's even worse now, Harry. And then the thing about a metal lace that was in the ball.
Good morning, everyone. This is a lovely morning. It's nice and sunny and everything is dry. Now I've been asked to give you a little history of my life, so I shall start and see how it goes now. My name is John Wallace, and I was born at 117 Lordburn Street in Dumfries back in 1921. I went to St John's School in Greystone. The football team was run by Mr Eric Higgins, and the forward line was like myself, and Tucker Thomas was inside left, and one of my best friends, Sammy Hartness, who became a director of Queen of the South and played senior football, was outside left. I moved to Dumfries High School after turning down Dumfries Academy because I preferred to go to the high school. I got a telling off from my Sunday school teacher for doing that, but there we are. These things happen. I left school at 14 and took a message boy's job with the Brothers and the Bakers. At 15, I got an invitation to become an automobile electrician.
On behalf of our late father, John Wallace, my mum, Janet and I would like to thank everyone who has made this such a special evening. We have great memories of the Greystone Rovers connection with Norway and the many trips we had over the North Sea, which were sometimes smooth but more often a bit rough. The friends we made were lifelong, and we are so pleased some have managed to come along this evening.
Our father, unfortunately, had no males in the family who had a great interest in football, although Margaret was always a bit of a tomboy, and she made many visits to Norway, taking my mum and dad latterly for holidays, keeping up a close contact with our Norwegian friends. Greystone Rovers was a massive part of our father's life, and we deeply appreciate all the people who are carrying on the memory of this great club, and wish them continued success.
Well, here I go again, and I believe it would be nice to tell you a wee story about how I started Greystone Rovers Football Club here in Dumfries. I moved out here to the Greystone district of Dumfries in 1937. Around this area was a small football pitch known as Huntington, and quite a number of young lads that wanted to play at football, so after a few practice games we decided that we must name the club. One of my old boys keeps telling me that just as we were walking up Carnegie Street, I suddenly said, right, it's Greystone Rovers is going to be the name.
Greystone Rovers is more than a football club, and Johnny Wallace was more than just a football manager. He was a mentor. He was an inspiration. He set down values and principles that I've held throughout my life. Had great opportunities with Greystone. Luckily, like Graham, twice went to Norway. Were involved with the first team to go to Norway Cup. Got to know some really nice people in Norway and still friends with Tor Harold from 1970, and that friendship wouldn't have lasted or even begun without being involved with Greystone. I think the thing that sticks out about the club, and it's reflected in its 80 years history, is the solid ground that it was set on, and people like Graham next to me here has carried on those principles that Johnny set down, and that's proved to be really successful for the club. And it's given direction to lots of young people who otherwise wouldn't have had that direction.
I first got involved with Greystone as a player at 11-year-old, playing till I was up till 16, played in under 12s, under 14s. fortunate during that time. I had 2 visits to Norway as part of the Norwegian connection in the club. Fantastic upbringing, being involved with a club that through Johnny Wallace had high principles. In a sense, he educated us on moral things as well as playing football. It was also a great grounding for anyone in football. Fortunately for me, it was the grounding that enabled me to, while I was at Greystone, sign a Scottish schoolboy form, the Old Days form. So I signed that when I was 14 with Queen of the South. After that, it wasn't long. I was only away, I think, for about a year, and walking home to my home village at Treggles, Johnny Wallace decided he would give me a lift home to Treggles. He obviously had ulterior motives, because during that short journey, he convinced me to come back and run a team, even though I'd just sort of left, for which I did. And here I am, still here today. The stories of Greystone and what Johnny passed on to us. And today our home strip is the red and white, based on Arsenal Football Club. Because what happened was, seemingly when Greystone was first formed in 1938, the first strip they ever had was a second-hand strip, was basically black and gold, and they first played in a black and gold strip. However, one of their members, through work, through circumstances, had to move from Dumfries and live in London, and through his work in London had a strong connection at Highbury with Arsenal Football Club. And I think he begged Arsenal, could we send a strip up to this team that's been newly formed in Dumfries? And Arsenal actually sent Greystone their first ever brand new strip, which was an Arsenal strip, the red and white. So traditionally today, Greystone playing the red and white and playing the Arsenal strip, because of that first ever strip being donated to a club by Arsenal. So obviously we're trying to keep the connection going, and I remember Johnny telling me really our second strip should be based on black and gold, whatever nearest we can get, to remember the fact that our first ever strip they ever played in 1938 was a black and gold second hand strip. So therefore our second strip is based on these colours.
We joined the local juvenile league shortly after that, after playing quite a number of friendly games, making money for the Red Cross. But we made a very, very good connection, because the Norwegians had come to Dumfries at that point in 1940, and they had a very good team, and we took them on at Huntington Park, and we drew 2 goals each. Jim Milligan, our inside right, scored both goals, and it made a very, very strong connection with Norway.
My name is Mark Jordan, and I was secretary and a coach with Greystone for about 10 to 12 years. The Norwegian connection with the Norwegian soldiers came across here during the Second World War. Norwegian House was where Oaten's was in the town centre near Burns statue in Dumfries. And then Johnny Wallace took the first group across, I think it was 1951, to play in Bergen, and that's how that friendship has continued.
Everything went fine until war broke out, and quite a number of people who worked at the Montgomery tradesmen were called up. Many of them finished up in prisoner of war camps after Dunkirk, and others were not so fortunate. I left the Montgomery in March 1941 and joined the Royal Air Force. And most of the other lads had joined some of the forces, and we had really to pack up until we came back home, if we were fortunate enough. August 1946 I got demobbed from the forces and went back to the Montgomery to continue. And we had a gathering together to remember the boys who didn't make it. And then we decided to start again. Robert Bell, who was the chairman at Greystone at the time, he and I went and met a gentleman who had been the officer commanding the Norwegians around this area, Major Musa, who had married a lady who had the county hotel. And we got put in touch with one of the greatest guys I've ever met in Norway, Svein Sandham. He was a businessman with a big factory, and he had been an officer here in Dumfries during the war, and he was delighted that he could invite Greystone Rovers to Norway. In 1952, the Norwegians came over here for their first visit, and they had a great time. We went back in 1953, and they came back again in 1954. In 1962, we returned to Norway with the team, and it's more or less continued ever since.
I went to Voss on 3 separate occasions, once with Graham and twice myself, taking up to 30 youngsters, both girls and boys, across to Norway. And they all loved the Norwegian food. For the first 2 days they wouldn't eat the Norwegian food, but then they were so hungry they would eat the grass. And in fact that was actually mentioned in the local paper in Bergen about eating the grass. And there was a young gentleman called Alan Carris, who's now a goalkeeping coach at Rangers, and he was asked what his success was down to, and he said eating the grass. So there you are.
During my last years at the Magneto Company, unfortunately it was a bit of a sad time for me because my mother passed away 19th of January 1952.
Hello.
Hello, just open the door, we're coming down the stairs.
Hello, Margaret.
I had to try and keep going, and I was very, very fortunate to find a lovely wife, Margaret Roddick.
Hello.
Hello, now I know who you are. Nice to see you, Michael.
She was a nurse up at the hospital, and one of the Norwegian boys who was visiting broke his arm at Palmerston, and I came in contact with her there.
I went way down to the ward and spoke to the person in charge. I said, "Where's this Norwegian boy?" And she took me, because I had never met Shell Craggy. And I said to him who I was, and he said, I said, "You've got a lot of pain, Shell." He said, "I have." I said, "Don't worry about that, we'll get that fixed." And I said to the sister on the way out, "Why is he not treated tonight?" She says, "Well, he's only about 16 and he can't give us permission for a general anaesthetic. So we can't do it without that." So I said, "Well, I'm over 21 and he's staying with my parents. I'll sign it." So I said, with the understanding when I got home, that I think the leaders of each of the teams will be there to find out what's happening, and perhaps they want to come back up and countersign it. So they said that would be fine. However, John, whom I didn't really know then, had said, he said, "That's fine," and off they went. We didn't have a phone at home. We phoned at the hospital to thank me for having helped them out of it and helped the lad out. And I kept saying, "That's fine, it's all right." But he kept phoning, and eventually he must have decided I better meet her. So he started coming up for me after different shifts, And it just one thing led to another. We started going out and eventually got married.
And so in 1953, on the 10th of December, we got married.
John and I were supposed to go on our honeymoon. It so happened that we found Mr. Sanham, who was the leader of the Norwegian side. He was a gentleman. And he contacted John to say, I think the day before the wedding, that he'd just got word that the ship's officers were going on strike that night. So we couldn't go. But Mr. Sanham became a good friend of ours long before that. And he was just like one of the family. But when it came to our golden wedding anniversary, our silver wedding, his wife sent me flowers and she said, I always remember that you and John are supposed to be here for your honeymoon.
Just about a year's time, the 2nd of December 1954, I got 2 lovely girls. That was Janet and Margaret, and they are still looking after me.
My name's Janet Jones.
My name's Margaret Wallace.
And we are Mr. John Wallace's daughters, and we're twins. The anniversary this year is 80 years of Greystone Rovers Football Club, which my father and other members started many years ago, of course, and we're so pleased to have this time of celebration. My father's life was Greystone Rovers. When we were very young, he was involved with Queen of the South, and so we've always grown up with him being part of the football fraternity in one way or another. He was a referee at one point.
I played a couple of friendly games for Queen of the South, but the rector at Dumfries Academy at the time wasn't very happy about one of his pupils being involved with professional football. As he quite bluntly put it to me, he says, Belle, my teachers aren't here to educate you to play football. We've got higher aspirations than that. And that more or less determined the course that I took into university to become a teacher. But no, it was an opportunity through Greystone that I got. Graham was a much better player than me, and he went further with that.
Obviously, the teachers recognised my academic ability and therefore promoted my football side of things. Having listened to Mike, yeah, I mean, it was to make my debut for Queen's at 17-year-old, having just left Greystone and still actually in 6th year at Dumfries Academy, was obviously something special. But it was pretty obvious that this was not something unique, and that when I went to Queen of the South, there was many players there who, I might say my coach was Ian McChesney, who had played with Greystone. There was people like Stuart Cochrane, Ted McMahon, Graham Robertson, I could name Kevin Hetherington. So I wasn't alone.
When we started the foundation, one of my aims was to protect the name of Greystone Rovers, because it meant so much to me, and it's certainly in safe and capable hands. And the two people, Elisa and Graham, are enhancing their reputation both locally, nationally and internationally with some of the initiatives that they've developed with mental health in the community, with the work that they're doing in the schools, encouraging children who are disaffected with their learning. Lots of stuff that's absolutely outstanding and should be highly commended.
My name's Elisa Templeton, and I've been here at the Greystone Foundation since we set up in October 2015. Myself and Graham Muir assisted in setting up the foundation and the board off the back of Football Club. So we've been registered as a charity with Oscar now for this will be our 3rd anniversary. In that time, we've been developing programmes within the community. We work with older people on physical health, mental health. We now run a mental health programme for men and women across Dumfries and Galloway. At the moment we're in sites in Dumfries and also in Castle Douglas, and this year we look to move into Stewartry. We also work with the local high school where we run a school of football. It's also into its third year, so we started off with first years. Last year we were into first and second years, and this year we've moved into the third year as well, which has been quite successful. We're also working with some of the primary schools and trying to get them on board and running similar kind of projects with those. We've been doing community initiatives as well for a few years on the 3G pitch, which came in at the end of year 5. So it initially came in through the football club, but now comes under the governance of the charity and the foundation. In the last year, we've also been successful in taking over the David Keswick Athletics Centre from the local authority under an SLA agreement. So we now manage the centre out of all school hours, school holidays for the community, which has to date been successful at the moment. We're trying to help and work with lots of different sporting groups that use the facility and use the centre. We have athletics groups, wheelchair athletics, various kind of martial arts groups, baton twirlers, and it's really great just to see the facility being used to its capacity. It really is a centre that's in demand, so we're quite happy that we've been able to take that on.
I'm the head coach and the chairman for the Dumfries and Galloway Wheelchair Track Athletics Club.
It's me, Ross is your chairman.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, very pleased to meet you then.
I've heard a lot about you.
It was all bad.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And as you can see behind me, we are supported by the Greystone Rovers Foundation. Part of our club is literally getting youngsters that are disabled, be it physical disability, wheelchair users, and we get them into sport. What we specialise here in is wheelchair racing, which we can boast to having the world champion, ranked number 1, Shelby Watson in our team, who's also one of our coaches. And we also do a sport called race running, which is actually getting those that have got very little ability in their leg to get them a function of motion and get them actually running on that track. So it's quite a thing to see some child get from a wheelchair to physically running, and that's what we achieve here at Dumfries. And when Greystone Rovers came into the foundation, they came into this, it was a case of they had the same ideas that we had as a club. We wanted to improve what we've got and look after what we've got, make it better. So I think our partnership that we have with the foundation has been a mega plus, because the likes of Graham, the chairman, and all the people on the committee, they're all thinking on the same wavelength as us. We're offering something here in Dumfries and Galloway that isn't available anywhere else.
The football club had such an energy, such a strong following, it's well embedded into the community, that we thought it would be great to try and harness that energy from both the players and the parents and the people who were part of the football club, and use that energy to then drive forward the charitable arm, which was then formed as the Greystone Rovers Foundation. We are very, very much in the early days, so it's still finding our feet, but we're quite happy that we've been able to reach children, young people, young adults, older people, people with disabilities, and people from all areas of the community and the town geographically, and we just hope to try and build upon that and increase that in the future.
Furthest back memory was my father coming in one night, pretty much looking like the coalman. There had been a really bad fire at Palmerston Park, and I don't know why my father came home, but whether it was just to have a quick change, but it was right back out again, and there had been quite a bit of damage done.
I just think he would think that nothing's changed in the terms of the philosophy and the way that the club should be run. He'll look at it and say that it's in the capable hands. It's doing the things for the young people in Dumfries that he set out to achieve. But I think he'll be a little bit envious as well, because we've now got a base here at Dumfries High School. We've now got a charity wing of the club, as Graham alluded to earlier, and the people that are working from the club, from Elisa and Graham through, are doing so much more in the community that's taken the name of Greystone into different areas in the community. And I think Johnny would sit back and go, yeah, we've got the right people in charge and they're doing the right things.
I mean, the people he knows in Norway, you would never believe it. Never believe it. They had even had his death in the papers in Haugesund, Bergen. And the number of people at the service here, the church was heaving. It was absolutely wonderful. We've been so blessed with it all.
My father was always, I would say, firm but fair, and when the boys were going to Norway, he always gave them a good lecture, just before they got on the bus, before they left Dumfries, to state that they were representing not just Dumfries but their country, and that they would have to be pretty well behaved, or they would be on that first boat back.
Johnny was a one-off. He probably would be saying to Graham now, "This is a load of nonsense. You're doing far too much," and he did that 20 odd years ago. But he would also be incredibly proud of Graham, who I think is his protege, and what Graham has achieved with this club, and it's taken on to so far. He wouldn't believe that it has got to this level. There are senior clubs within the UK who do not have this history.
What he was a visionary, and I remember him one evening, sort of at the time he was handing the club over to us when I became chairman, and I remember saying it's changed days, he says, and just keep telling me when the games are on. But what he did say was, because of change in society and things moving on through the years, he says, I won't agree with everything you do, but you can be guaranteed if you're needing help, I'll be right there behind you. And that was him basically saying, things are going to change, you're going to have to adapt, but if you can keep the same ethos and principles, you'll get through it.
I was then thinking I had done quite a lot, and I should hand over soon, and it was never so long, because I decided to hand over to Graham Muir to be chairman, and Graham has done his best to keep growing the Norwegian connection, and the club's still functioning well. And only a few weeks ago, we had a visit from friends from the town of Haugesund in Norway, and they came over with their little team and enjoyed some nice days. So I hope Graham can keep it going. He's managed to do okay, and he's got my daughter involved to help him, and with others. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, Greystone is something special. Not just a football team, it's something very special. And long may it continue. And good luck, boys, from Johnny.